Hey there, I'm Lewis and I'm a product manager at zeroheight. In this short video, I'm going to show you how to get your component set into shape so that you can start using it to help you make decisions about what to do next to improve your design system. While the creation of a component set is largely automated, there are a few manual steps that we recommend that you follow in order to make sure that the set accurately reflects the status of your design system components. So let's dive in. This video begins with the component set summary modal. If you have any questions or you're unsure about how to create a component set, you should review the previous video that will walk you through those steps. But let's kick things off here. So the component set summary modal shows you the number of confirmed components you have and the number of unconfirmed. So I've got 15 confirmed components and 17 unconfirmed components. A confirmed component is a component that we've been able to match to at least two of the sources that you configured when you created the set, or has the name that we commonly see in a component set. Unconfirmed components only exist in one of the sources that you configured during setup, and their names don't match those that we normally see in a list of components in a design system. That definition will become important a little bit later, and we'll talk about that then. So let's have a quick look at this component set. We can see a row in the table for each component that we have found in the sources, with a column for each of the sources you defined. For the documentation column, there's a link to that page of the documentation alongside a status tag. For the design column, there's the name of that item in the Figma library. You can hover to preview the component, and you can click out to view that component in Figma. In Storybook, we've got the link that you can click out to view the component in Storybook. For both design and Storybook, we've also got these status tags. Let's talk about the status tags for design and Storybook. The logic here is very simple. If we've been able to identify a match for the component in that source, we've indicated that this component is ready in design. If we've been unable to find a match for that component in the source, then we've added the status tag of to do. For documentation, the status is managed slightly differently. The style guide I used to create this component set was already using page statuses in the style guide. So we've automatically pulled those statuses in to the documentation column. But if you were using the page status feature to represent something other than the status of the page of the documentation, perhaps the component overall, then you can turn off this toggle to stop using page statuses for the documentation status column. If you choose to do so, you'll see this confirmation modal. I'll confirm it. And what's going to happen now is that we're now using the same logic to determine the statuses of the documentation column. In my case, I actually want to use the page statuses for documentation status, so I'm going to turn that setting back on. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to review each of the items in my component set that have been matched across all three sources, and I'm just going to review whether or not the matches make sense to me. So let's start off with the add tile component. It's been linked to the add tile page in documentation, the add tile component in Figma, and the add tile component in Storybook. That looks good to me. I'll quickly review the banner. Yep, that looks good. Button looks good. Checkbox. Yes, that looks good. The rest of these components have something missing, so I'm going to come back and review those. And then the last one, text input. It's been named slightly differently in Figma. Maybe that's good to know, but it's been matched across all three sources. So there's nothing I need to change here. But if something didn't look quite right to you, you'll be able to click Edit and then modify any of the links that have been automatically made. I'm now going to review my list of components where there's something missing, and I'm going to reflect on whether there is actually something missing or whether there's a matching item that should have been matched but isn't. Starting with button radio group. We've been able to find a button radio group documentation page and a button radio group component in Storybook, but nothing in design. Now I know that I do have a button radio group component in Figma, but it's just not been pulled through. And we'll come back to this because I know this exists in Figma. Next up is the lightbox component. And this one I do know that actually this isn't present in Figma, so that's all working as expected. Next up is the modal component, and that appears to be missing in documentation. Now I'm not sure about this. Maybe there is a component page for the modal. Maybe it's been named something different. So I'm going to go through to link documentation and I'm going to conduct a search in my documentation for modal. Nothing found. Looks like I don't have a page of documentation for modal, so the component set matching has worked as expected. Next up is the dot radio button that only appears to exist in Figma. Now this makes sense to me because I use the dot notation to indicate when a component is in progress. So I'm still in the process of building out this component in Figma, so I'm going to change the status to in progress. Next up, we've got search input. That's present in documentation in Figma, but not Storybook. So the status of to do in Storybook, that makes sense to me. The slider, that's also missing from documentation. That appears to be correct too. Lastly, from the confirmed components that appear to have something missing is the switch component. And actually this component has recently just been signed off, so I'm going to change the status here to new. Now for this demo component set, this has all been quite manageable. All of the components are visible to me in a single page, and I can relatively easily glance down the list. But I just wanted to point out that if your component set has many more components in it, then maybe the filters might be useful. What you can do is, you can filter your component set to only show items that, for example, are missing in documentation. This would enable you to quickly review these, in my case 4 items, and confirm whether or not this component exists in the given source. This functionality is available for all 3 columns. I'm now going to move on to reviewing my unconfirmed components. But first of all, let's think about why. Why is it important to review and process the unconfirmed components in your set? The first reason is that when you arrive at your component set and you want to use it to make some decisions, which is covered in a separate video, you want to be able to do so with the default view. You want the component set to really reflect all of the design system components. But if they're unconfirmed, you will have to toggle in order to see them. The second reason is that soon you'll be able to add a view of your component set to your documentation, but only confirmed components will be included in the view that exists in your documentation. So the first thing I'm going to do is that now I'm including unconfirmed, I've got a new option in my filter. I want to just view unconfirmed components. And the very first thing that I notice is that there are a large number of unconfirmed components that exist in the glyphs folder in my Figma file. Given this, I've just realized that I have a large number of components in Figma that aren't actually design system components, they're icons, and they exist in the glyphs folder. Now ordinarily, zeroheight will filter out any items in your Figma file that are in a folder called icons, but because I've rather esoterically named my icons folder glyphs, that hasn't been picked up. But what I can do, and what you can do, if you have a folder in your Figma file that contains Figma components that don't belong in your component set, you can open up the kebab menu, go to Manage Design Files, find the folder that you don't want to be included, and uncheck the box. That's going to trigger a resync from Figma, and we're going to refresh and try and re-identify confirmed and unconfirmed components. You'll see that we've gone down from 17 to 5 unconfirmed components. So there were 12 icons in that glyphs folder that now don't appear in my component set. Let's review these remaining 5 one by one. So the first item in the list is the component summary page in my documentation. Now this is a page that I use to summarize all of the components in my design system. It doesn't correspond to an actual component, so I can select this one and delete it. Next up is the input background component. Now this component is also preceded by a dot. And not only do I use the dot notation to indicate that a component is new or in progress, I also use it to indicate that it's actually a subcomponent. So input background is actually a subcomponent for the larger component of text input, but it's actually a component in Figma, so it's being pulled into the component set. I've also got placeholder that the same is true for, so I'm going to select input background and placeholder and delete those. Next up is the pie chart component. Now this component is also has the dot before it, and that means that it's in progress, so I'm going to change the status to in progress. But it's been registered as an unconfirmed component because pie chart isn't a common name for a component that zeroheight commonly sees. So I'm going to need to manually confirm this as a component, which I can do by checking the box and clicking confirm. Now that leaves me with only one outstanding unconfirmed component. And that brings us back to the example we saw earlier for the button radio group. It turns out that my button radio group component in Figma has been named toggle button. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this toggle button component because I don't want toggle button component to be represented as a standalone component. I need to link it to the button radio group component. So now I can clear the filters. I've got no more unconfirmed components in my set. And here we are with my button radio group component that is missing in design. There are two ways to fix this. One that I would recommend and one that I wouldn't. I'm going to show you the non-recommended way nonetheless. So we can open up the edit menu and I can go to link design and I can conduct a search for toggle button and I can navigate the folder structure until I reach the Figma component, select it and link it. So now this component has been linked to all three sources correctly. But by interacting with the links for a component manually, this setting has now been automatically toggled off. Component links can update via sync. When you manually link a component to a source or another, zeroheight takes that as an indication that you would like to manage the links for this component and not rely on the automatic linking that the feature offers. This is why I would recommend against this option. Instead, I would recommend changing the name of the component in the source so that it matches. So let's undo the link that I did manually and turn this setting so that component links can update via sync back on, which is the default state for all of the components in your set unless you manually edit one of the links. I can now hop into the Figma file that's being used for this set and rename the toggle button component to button radio group and then return to the component set in zeroheight and click sync. Now, because we ensured that the button radio group component will update on sync, and now the item in Figma matches the name in the other two sources, we should see this component get automatically linked to the component set. And here it is, working as expected. And that's it. Now my component set is in good shape. It accurately reflects the design system components that I'm looking after. Now I can use it to help me make decisions and generate insights about my design system components. Check out the next video in this series for an exploration of how you might do that.